Pokemon has so many characters, and while I've touched on a few of them before with the villain teams and the gym leaders and the rivals, I wanted to do an in-depth psych. We aren't doing Pokemon today because I have trouble focusing on one thing. Around the start of 2022, I put out a tweet with that pic of comment if you want to collab with me, and some absolute legend at KDogGaming31 suggested I do a tier list of all the characters from my favorite game of all time, Fire Emblem Three Houses. Well, you brilliant, beautiful being you, I heard you, and while I do not feel super comfortable collaborating with people I don't know, I wanted to give them credit for giving me the idea. But I still wanted to do a collab. So with that in mind, let me slip into something less comfortable.
Much worse, but we must carry on.
Yeah, that extra dimension is a wee bit tough to get used to.
Well, hello there, handsome. Fancy meeting you here. Come to join me in gushing about my favorite video game of all time?
Oh, yeah, sign me up. So it's kind of a funny thing, actually. Like, I had plans on doing a video like this by myself for a while on my own YouTube channel, and... oh, yeah, right. Who am I? So... I don't know if any of you on Josh's channel will actually remember me, but I'm Alex. I'm a voice actor for cartoons and video games, longtime friend of Josh and Ari's, and you might remember I used to do top 10 lists of my own, like Josh does. These days, between my day job, I just kind of do my own thing, usually just quick little voiceover posts and the occasional tier list.
There are people who watch this channel who don't know you? Man, I'm old.
Yeah, between that and the gray hairs, tell me about it. Anywho, like Ari, I'm a huge fan of Fire Emblem Three Houses. Josh first described it to me as Fire Emblem meets Persona, and as someone who enjoyed Fire Emblem Awakening quite a bit and loves the Persona franchise, that immediately sold me. Three Houses tasks you with building and maintaining a strong army throughout your school life at the Garrigmach Monastery Officers Academy. To that end, it incentivizes you to care for your troops by presenting a colorful cast with whom you'll hopefully be marching to victory, or their deaths if you somehow ended up not recruiting them like I did in my first Crimson Flower run. Please forgive me, Ignots!
Fair warning, we are not ranking all the new playable characters from Three Hopes, just the ones from Three Houses. This is going to be long enough as it is, so just roll with it. There will be a couple of characters we rank on here who aren't playable, but we will get to them. We are not going to rank Byleth because, unlike Robin and Corrin, they have very little personality on their own, so they feel more like a bystander than a character in the original Three Houses. Obviously, that's different in Three Hopes.
Ari, do you think they get we're doing Three Houses?
I hope so, but then sometimes with these people I just can't tell. I mean, they wanted N on the rivals list.
But wait, N is...
No.
I think we should preface this list by saying that there aren't very many characters we actually hate. We love this cast as a whole. They're the whole reason I've played this game multiple times and would like to do another run eventually. This list is compromised though, so it's a mix of our two opinions. So take it with a grain of salt. Or an owl feather? Look, just tread lightly. Also, preemptive spoiler alert, but that should probably go without saying.
And here we go, F tier. I don't like these people. For whatever reason, they rub me the wrong way. Maybe I find them annoying, boring, or downright problematic, we shall see. But I can safely say that I'd rather they not be in the game. Now, I do understand that any one of these characters can be someone's favorite, but hey, it's our video, nyeh, 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 nyeh.
Okay, so I'm gonna level with y'all. Does anybody like Gilbert? I mean, other than the whole lukewarm, he's nice, that kind of deal. Does he have a fan club? Do we have any Gilbert stans in the audience? Like, okay, in the Azure Moon route, it's impossible not to compare Gilbert to Dedue. They're both nice, they're both tanky, but once you get Dedue back, you'll find that Dedue is simply just a better Gilbert. And promptly throw Monsieur Gustave out for good. Because while they fill similar battle niches, beyond the kindly, fatherly exterior, Gilbert's got problems.
I don't think I've seen anyone stand up for this guy, and in my opinion, no one should. He's obsessed over whomever is in the position of king to the point where he abandons his wife and daughter to live in self-imposed exile. Dimitri didn't send him away. Rufus didn't send him away. Cornelia didn't send him away. No one told him to leave, so you think he'd stay behind to protect the crown prince, right? Nah, fam, he just went out for milk and never came back because he couldn't see the goddamn future to anticipate a betrayal-based ambush that slaughtered everyone except Dimitri. He claims that he failed King Lambert, but I think he failed King Lambert more by leaving Prince Dimitri to his own devices in a court where he was clearly a target while he was mourning his father, stepmother, and all of his friends. If Gilbert the Filbert hadn't ditched Dimitri, he may not have spiraled into the blue ball of depression and murder that he is today.
It cannot be overstated that he abandoned his wife and child. Yes, they were less important to him than his ego. Lesson of the day, kids. Being nice is different from being good.
Okay, Cyril. Cheerios. Okay, I'm a little surprised he got all the way down here. He seems pretty inoffensive to me. He's a sweet young man who has some good supports. The one where Lysithea teaches him to read is cute and—
Lady Rhea! What do you want? I'm busy. 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 Lady Rhea! What do you want? I'm busy.
Continue.
Oh, Nelly, do I not like this little dweeb. There are a lot of characters who, for whatever reason, understandable or not, are loyal to Lady Rhea. That itself is fine. But Cyril's pretty much made it his entire personality, to the detriment of everything else. I have never used this guy once in combat, because while I'm sure as a Wyvern rider he could be useful, he's just so utterly standoffish and rude to everyone that isn't Rhea at first. Like, can't you see I'm working? I'm cleaning the floors with my toothbrush for Lady Rhea. Like, take your attachment issues somewhere else and go to a charm school or something.
I feel less guilty for enjoying his death the one time I played Crimson Flower now. Thank you. My soul has been cleansed. Also, I have to admit, his glow-up was pretty nice, but oh my gosh. His S support is cringe and painful, and I want to set him on fire.
This cringe-ass Nene baby won't stop talking about Rhea even when romancing you, and he's all like, love ya, bye-bye, after calling your wedding ring a curse! What is wrong with you?
Okay, y'all, y'all ready for the tea on the
Woo! Catherine is a sucky person. I wish we could just leave it at that and go to D tier, but no, my contract says we have to go into detail. So let's put out this fire with gasoline, shall we? First of all, let's get her good qualities out of the way.
Her design is nice, like, her haircut's pretty stylish. I love the look of her Thunderbrand sword and promptly yoinking it and giving it to someone else. And she and Shamir look good together. Proceed.
Yes, thank you, I will. She is an unflinching and unwavering zealot and murderer. She admitted to Shamir that if someone spoke anything of heresy and she didn't know them, she'd cut them down on the spot. Any opposition to her precious Rhea or the church, and she'd go Benedict Arnold on you like she did with her best friend Kristoff.
Crimson Flower being my first route did not endear her to me one bit. Remember that whole putting out the fire with gasoline bit? This is a reference not just to David Bowie, but also to the fact that at the end of that route, she is accessory to arson. She's not cool with it for, a second in a cutscene. But what her precious lady says goes, I guess.
Let me put it like this. She and Kristoff, her bestie from when they were at the academy together, were plotting to kill the king, as in King Lambert, the dad of the kid that, you're hired to keep safe and teach here at the academy. That dude. Someone snitched on her and she fled to the monastery to seek sanctuary. Rhea was like, chill out, man, I got you. And what did Kathy Psychopathy do? She turned in her best friend for the crime that she was also committing. So not only was she going to kill the monarch of the kingdom that most supports Rhea, which Rhea forgave because she always makes sense, she was absolved because she captured and killed her best friend.
Man, the hair, though.
All right, out of the pure hatred forest and into the plains of mundanity, it's D tier, everybody. Don't get too excited. We still don't like these people. But they're not quite as offensive to our senses of decency as the previous ones, so yay. May as well bring them in. I don't know. How do you be excited for things you don't like? Do you go like, yay, Mondays or something?
Hey, look, it's Gilbert again? What? You mean that's not Gilbert? Oh, okay. Alois isn't that bad. He's not an orange-haired, child-abandoning plank of wood, at least. In fact, his problem might be that he tries to pile on the personality a little too thick. Case in point, dad jokes. So many dad jokes.
Plus, you can't even romance him. And I don't need any non-romance options in my dating sim that happens to have killing in it, thank you!
Ironically, considering she's a Pegasus Knight, Ingrid is definitely one of the more grounded and ordinary characters in Three Houses. And in her case, that's not exactly a good thing. She's kind of boring, even down to her design. Just a kind of typical proper blonde. I mean, come on, we got blue hair, green hair, pink hair, be bold! Really, the most memorable thing about Ingrid from my time playing through Azure Moon was her knocking Sylvain down a few pegs. Good for her for that. There's also the thing about her being prejudiced against the people of Dusker. Now, character flaws on their own are fine, and it does serve to show the horrible effects that the tragedy had on the citizens of Fargus. But yeah, with a character this boring singled out as the bigot, it's no wonder I've rarely seen her name brought up as far as favorites go in this game.
Also, can we talk about her glow down? In both games, I feel like she got the short end of the design stick. Her grown-up designs feel a little bland. She got a minty green ribbon in her hair in Three Houses and a Karen Jr. cut in Three Hopes. Not a good look when you're already a little problematic, Ingrid. Just wait. She's gonna be like that one Vine.
Not to be racist or anything, but...
I really don't like Leonie. She's boring. One note. She's got two defining character traits, and neither of them make her interesting. She looks up to Geralt. Okay, sure, but what does that say about her? That she has excellent taste, sure, but it's not something that can be developed as much. She's also frugal and good at upcycling. Cool, I'm bored now, Mom. Can we go home?
I want to like Leonie more than I do. I think her design is very striking, kind of having a wilder edge due to being from a more rural area, and the bob she sports in Three Hopes is a good look. Golden Deer on the whole looks great in that game, but, like, Geralt. She's basically Diet Cyril, now with the taste of orange Fanta. Like, at the very least, she's personable enough to most of her teammates, save for Byleth, because, daddy figure issues! But, yeah, I've kind of got nothing else to say.
I'm not saying Leonie's a bad person, but when I was making this list before Alex came in, I pretty much forgot about her. I never save her when I'm on another run, I never recruit her, I think her adult design is boring. I don't know, I just don't like her. She bores me. Maybe she can go have tea with Olympia, I don't know. Next up, Flayn. Oh my gosh, she annoys the frick out of me. Her voice just rubs me the wrong way. I really don't like hearing her speak. I hate using her because the way I play, she's already behind in levels when you get to her. And I hate that you can't get rid of her unless you play Crimson Flower. Or kill her, but I'm a wuss and I don't play permadeath. I see you out there, Green Scorpion. I get it, she's Sethlene, she's been alive for hundreds of years, and that's pretty cool, but her origins aren't really well explained, and she doesn't seem to grow as a person. Or maybe she does, but I just didn't care enough about her to pay attention. She's always following everyone around like a baby ducky, even though she's almost 50 times older than them. Her voice is grating, and just leave me alone, Flayn. Yes, you're lonely, take it up with your dad and find some friends that aren't me. Yes, I know I'm awful, but with her, I do not care.
I think Flayn is just kind of all right, personality-wise. That's better than her gameplay ability because wow is she useless in that department. She may be kind and sweet, but I do kind of like that even before you know her true identity, she does occasionally hint that she knows more than she leads on about. Especially with her supports with Ignatz. They're ridiculously cute together, okay? But otherwise I can kind of take her or leave her.
Why is nearly everybody in Rhea's employ some sort of obsessive?
Including Rhea herself.
Never mind, that answered it.
Hey everybody,
It's time to play my favorite Fire Emblem game. What's their personality quirk? Leonie likes Geralt. Alois likes dad jokes. Cyril sucks. And Hanneman really likes crests and the study thereof. Which is somewhat funny when you factor in the coincidence that he shares a voice actor with Igor from Persona 3 and 4, and how, like the social links in those games, the crests in Three Houses have a tarot card motif.
Hanneman, like Leonie, is one of those ones I find boring. Like, I already paid way too much money to go to college and listen to things I'll never use again. I don't want it in my wartime dating sim, thank you very much. His design is every boring professor that has ever been created rolled into one. Dressing down? Blech. He's even stereotypically fastidious. I feel like everyone exhausted all their creativity on everyone else and they're like, hell, we forgot this guy, quick, make him every t-shirt we slept through at school.
Ari, you say that jokingly, but I wouldn't doubt that the dev team would straight up forget poor old Mr. Cellophane over here. He's one of the few characters from Three Houses who didn't return as a playable character in Three Hopes.
Ooh, right up there with Gilbert and Cyril getting the shaft. He's not that terrible of a guy. I mean, at least he didn't set anyone on fire or backstab anyone, as far as I know.
Plus, as one note as he can be, Hanneman does kind of have a funny and somewhat sweet support with Manuela, to his credit. Because, like, that's me with my girlfriend there. He hates cooking but loves cleaning, and Manuela loves cooking and hates cleaning. Somehow that makes me the Manuela in our relationship.
How dare you make me imagine you in a halter dress?
Hey lady, your thoughts, not mine.
I've made it clear that there is a certain kind of character I despise. The womanizer. It was Inigo in Awakening, Laszlo in Fates, who are technically the same person, and Sylvain in Three Houses. It will never go away. Ever. I hate characters who flirt shamelessly, even when they are seeing someone steadily, and play it off like it's no big deal when confronted with the fact that they hurt someone. I will admit that Inigo is worse in that regard. Literally in 4 of his 7 S supports where he marries people, he still says he's going to flirt with other women. But Sylvain is here, so here we are. Yes, he has a psychological reason for being a man whore, but that doesn't make it okay. Disregarding people's feelings, generalizing women and treating them like mindless objects who only want his money and status, using them for his enjoyment and holding them in contempt while not even trying to learn about them and prove his jaded preconceptions wrong, none of that is okay. And Sylvain does all of that.
What's especially frustrating about him is how shocked he acts when, gasp, some of the people he has flings with also just see him as a means to an end. I mean, he's aware of this fact, and I'll commend self-awareness as a character trait, but that doesn't really make him that pitiable or relatable. It just kind of makes him the Fire Emblem equivalent of the surprised Pikachu meme. Like, no kidding, it sucks to be used, Sherlock. Just because you've got flaws and are aware of them, that's only step 1. That doesn't automatically make you enlightened or pardoned. If anything, if you don't put in the work to move past the mistakes you know you have, I think that kind of makes you worse for it. It's not your crest or your noble status. It's you, Sylvain. It's you.
And so we have trekked through the swamps of suckness. But we didn't lose the horse.
And you just re-traumatized half the audience.
Buck up, Buttercup. We got some actually decent characters to talk about. It's C tier.
Well, if it ain't the inevitable 1,000-year lolly.
Except this one acts more like an adult, so it's slightly more acceptable.
Emphasis on slightly. Uncomfortable as the trope often is within Fire Emblem, and let's face it, too many games in anime, I will say that Sothis doesn't bother me as much as other examples tend to. For one, since she's the literal goddess of Fodlan, I can at least buy that she's a bit unnatural and doesn't follow the same rules as everyone else. Plus, given that she's super snarky, her age means that she at least has the wisdom and experience to back up her jabs. I mean, just listen to her in the Byleth reveal trailer for Smash Ultimate.
I see. Too many swordsmen, are there?
Those are the words of someone who's been around people too long for her own good.
While I am grateful that she isn't as sexualized in-game as someone like, say, Noe, I really love her sass. Sometimes protagonists in RPGs don't get challenged enough on their decisions, and while she never actively stops you from doing anything, she's not above calling you out when you're being dumb or potentially doing something dangerous. Arval does that as well. In my opinion, he does it a little better, but Sothis was the original, and her voice is just, oh, chef's kiss perfect, sassy and chipper.
Ah, yes, Cassandra Lee, she who is typecast as the mentor character archetype. Only thing missing is for her to tell Byleth to go to sleep. Although, based off the key art for this game, she does a good enough job of doing that herself. Or maybe she'll offer someone a contract, but hey, there's some more trauma for you, But as much as I do like Sothis, I feel like they underutilized her a bit. Her backstory, as explained by Rhea, sounds fascinating and tragic, but it's all hearsay. Meanwhile, Sothis herself never talks about her past to Byleth. She more or less disappears after Act 1 until the end when you can suddenly romance her? Okay, I won't even begin to debate the logistics of how all that works.
I mean, it's the perfect reason to stay single and child-free. Aunt Karen asks you, why aren't you married yet? Oh, I'm married to an incorporeal goddess attached to my soul. The first of the good boy squad, Caspar. I adore this dumb chicken nugget. He's so cute. And teeny, hence the nugget.
Caspar is a simple character with a simple mind. Born in a military background, he really loves to fight, and embraces the philosophy of might makes right. Which is more than a little uncomfortable if he ends up working with Edelgard. In other routes where he can channel that mindset into defending what he loves rather than dominating with the Empire, though, Caspar does have qualities that endear him to me. Despite valuing strength as a means of securing peace and power, he's nothing but kind and approachable to everyone, no matter what army he becomes a part of. In fact, he hints that he's not fully proud of his family's warlike actions, as seen with his support conversations with Petra. Caspar's father killed Petra's father, the King of Brigid, forcing Petra's homeland to become a vassal state of the Adrestian Empire. And he's not comfortable with this, viewing it as a tragedy of his family's past sins that he hopes never to have to repeat. The guy even goes off reservation to move to Brigid with Petra in their paired ending, standing by his lady even as she breaks off from Fodlan.
I have a low tolerance for stupidity, but Caspar is a kind of dumb I don't mind. He's the sweet and not so destructive kind of dumb. Yes, he gets in fights, but for good reason, and more often than not because he just doesn't know how to solve the problem without his fists. He manhandles Bernadetta, but just because he's trying to help her and doesn't know how to articulate what he thinks. He's got a big heart and doesn't let his lack of etiquette hold him back. I think the idea of himbo is growing on me. Stupidity not for the sake of humor or putting someone down, but just because they struggle with certain things and are still big, kind teddy bears.
Plus, I love his supports with Hilda, too. Like, Caspar being the oblivious type to Hilda's Hime-sama complex is kind of a match made in heaven. Especially when Hilda says in so few words that she'd really like to try out his shake weight, if you will. He's stupid. I bet Hilda likes that in a man.
Not gonna lie, I was super drawn to this guy before I played the game. I saw the pictures and I was like, yes, okay, I found my snack. And while he didn't seem to live up to it, I find that he's a bit more nuanced than a lot of people think. Felix.
Felix is one of those characters that has a lot going on in his backstory to give him depth, especially with regards to his childhood friendship and growing wariness towards Dimitri. But man, he's got such a bleak attitude towards everyone. It's kind of exhausting, honestly. He even hates his own father, Rodrigue, and nobody disses that handsome devil without getting at least a C.
I find that actually feeds into his nuance. If you dig down, he's actually an honorable and kind-hearted guy. For how much he likes to improve his strength or test himself in battle, he doesn't want people to die. He doesn't fight to kill, he fights for the art. He hates his dad for praising his brother Glenn's death as something good and noble, when he died in a senseless slaughter orchestrated by a bitter old man and an evil group in the shadows. Death isn't heroic to him, living on to fight is. He also has a distaste for senseless violence, which is why he reviles Dimitri. I actually interpret his revulsion as more of a fear and pity combination. He sees Dimitri's bloodlust as dangerous and something to be shunned, and he is afraid of what Dimitri will do. He just has a warped way of showing it. He is also dealing with his own traumas and is unable to help Dimitri with his, which is why he snarks from the sidelines instead of actually helping him like Byleth does in Three Houses. Three Hopes, different story.
I'll say this much for how gratingly mid-2000s depressing edgelord Evanescence over here can be. His support with Annette is adorable. If only because he could really use someone like her to lighten up.
Annette's support, I feel, gives him one of the happiest endings. She doesn't feed into his ego, she helps him unwind, which is what he needs. He puts so much pressure on himself when really he just needs to let it go, let it go.
And to his credit, his portrayal in Three Hopes also rounds him out nicely. Maybe it's due to the shorter time skip that he hasn't had as much time to marinate in his anger towards Dimitri, but he tends to be a lot less bitter and more appropriately stern and concerned. But his hair in that game, ugh. A dude that edgy deserves to have hair that looks sharp.
I don't like this guy. At all. I mean, I can't stand him. I want to run away from him. Just like, no, go away. This is a safe space.
In hindsight, I'm surprised I didn't immediately guess Edelgard was the Flame Emperor, if only because of this guy. Hubert's like if every previous Fire Emblem Dark Wizard antagonist was a schoolboy. He'd kill you in your sleep, slit his mama's throat for a nickel, all of Lady Edelgard asked him to do it. But despite being 80s single-minded manservant, some hints of an autonomous person do slither through the cracks, particularly in his supports with Bernadetta. The poor girl's terrified of Hubie, and he actually shows concern and takes care of her when she faints during their interactions. See? He's a loyal person by nature, right? It's not just out of practicality for his army.
Whatever helps you sleep at night, dear. On the other hand, I knew she was bad news. Not necessarily the Flame Emperor immediately, but I knew I was gonna have to throw hands with that sooner or later because of Hubert. Nobody who is his best friend can be fully okay. You have to be some flavor of basket case Robbins to be able to tolerate him for extended periods of time. And she's flavor number 27, but we'll get to her later. Let's focus on this serial killer light. He's creepy, kooky, mysterious, and spooky, altogether ooky. He's basically this high because he's a good unit. Maybe. I only played his route once. And now I need a shower.
He's also this high because, okay, like, I kind of had to compromise on this, but man, I adore Robbie Daymond and all of his characters and performances, okay? I swear I can fix them. But honestly, they'd probably just make me worse.
I agree, Robbie Daymond is bae. Meanwhile, Hubert is the Danish word bae. Look it up, I'm not explaining the joke.
To me, Annette's always just been that one nice girl. Like, isn't she just so nice? She's a lot like her dad in that regard, come to think of it. Okay, that's too far. She'd never abandon her family, I hope.
I find her fine. She exists. She's nice. She's bland. Oh, look, murder! I don't know. Give me something interesting. She's not hateable. I have to give that to her. She is not a piece of garbage like her dad and Catherine. She's not morally objectionable like Sylvain, but she is also a placeholder. She is functional pixels. Annette is great in battle. Her black mage capabilities are incredible. She gets decent speed so she can often attack twice, and she's incredibly accurate with her wind magic. But I'd still rather use almost any other magic user because I don't find her that fun to play with. Compared to the others, her problems and traumas don't seem as bad. As horrible as that sounds, she was abandoned by her father. But that translates to someone I'm not as invested in seeing their growth. Plus, I just don't like hearing her. I find her voice squeaky and annoying.
Honestly, she really doesn't bother me at all, especially given that her actress is the singer of Smash Ultimate's theme song, Lifelight, and also the voice of my queen.
Would you like to hold hands?
My queen.
Because of all this, though, she does get the Olympia Award. Congratulations, you exist! So, I'm weird. I know, tell you something you don't know, but still, I never played the Ashen Wolves DLC. I was concerned that it wouldn't improve my favorite game and, at worst, would make me not enjoy it as much as I did, so I stayed away. Therefore, while the DLC Ashen Wolves are on here, I know very little about them.
Luckily for Ari, I know something of wolves. I think the DLC was alright. The side story amounted to totally not big bad Elfric crushing so hard on Byleth's dead mom that he becomes a Dargon. Though I do appreciate how they didn't go the easy route of just making it a golden ending that neatly wraps up the story in a why can't we all get along bow.
High revelations.
And the new playable characters I thought were kinda neat too. Slightly more roguish than the usual cast, but otherwise unobtrusive to the main game. And out of all 4 Ashen Wolves, Balthus is just kind of okay. I feel like in this game I've seen at least 2 of him before. The brawling meatheads Raphael and Caspar, and even more if you consider the flirts.
Great, where do I swipe right?
To be fair, he is not nearly as bad as Sylvain in that regard, as his penchant for women is more of a background detail. He's defined by his macho overconfidence and—
Stop, you've already convinced me I can only take so much sexiness, help me.
And so, in Three Hopes, it's funny watching him try to put the moves on Shamir, who very well might be the worst possible choice of flirtation for the sake of his future. And his bloodline's future, if you know what I'm saying, boys. Although, what is interesting about Balthus is that in combat, he has a hidden talent in reason, which implies that he often knows a lot more about what's going on than people expect given his archetype. In fact, he's one of the few characters who figures out Claude's true identity on his own. I guess leave it to the mole people to know what lies beneath the surface. I've always felt about Ash similarly to the way I do about Annette. He's nice. Look at how nice and inoffensive he is. Then add a dash of heartwarming orphan and a dollop of Lanato, Lanato, Lanato. Ugh, like, I get it. Ash is genuinely a sweetheart, but frankly, I just find him very boring. I do like my wholesome and saccharine stuff. We'll get into plenty of that. But there's only so much sickly, lilting sweetness I can take if it doesn't elicit any other curious reactions in me other than my gag reflex. In battle, he is also vastly outclassed by Shamir and Bernie as snipers. He's definitely one of those characters that Ari likes a lot more than I do, and I'll let her talk more about him before I feel myself going Count Olaf on his butt.
I personally think that Ash is a sweet boy. I'd add him to the good boy squad if I was allowed, but it's for himbos only, so here we go. Ash is the wooby character for me in this game, and I know there are kind of a lot of them, in that he always has this tone to his voice where you just feel so bad for him. Even when he's happy, there's still that undertone of sadness he has. And those who know me know I'm a bit of a sucker for woobies. I also think that while he's not the most interesting of characters, his kindness and willingness to help others makes him a bit more endearing. I get it, he's a little bland, but he's still that piece of white bread I want to protect. Wait, that sounded weird, let me just— So, you know how I have an issue with flirty characters? That isn't just restricted to men. I dislike flirty women too. See, feminism marches on. And so do Manuela's tracts of land. Manuela bothers me, I guess. She's perfectly nice, I think, but the problem I have with flirt characters is how much of their niceness is genuine and how much is trying to sway people to their side. As you can tell, this was definitely an Alex pick, so I'll let him sort it out.
I can see how she'd make people uncomfortable, but I think there's a lot more to her. Manuela's a flirt, kinda trashy, and incredibly insecure, but she's a lot more discerning about her choices in men than just jumping the bones of any student that comes her way. Notably, the only support where she outright considers pursuing a student is, shock of all shocks, Sylvain. While he's old enough to not make it illegal, even Manuela herself seriously debates whether or not it's even okay to pursue him by virtue of their age difference. And even then, she ends up pretty upset seeing Sylvain's immaturity. She doesn't even have an A rank with him afterwards, so you know he messed up.
So she gets points for not being so easy she'll fall for the cheapest tricks in the book. I guess.
But cynically, I suppose. But I really do love her supports, and out of all of them, her best and most revealing, pun shockingly not intended, is with Ferdinand, where their relationship can be summed up as, you're better than you think you are. Manuela's aging and depressed that her glory days at the theater are long past her, but Ferdinand's idealism and fond memories of watching her performances genuinely have her feeling grateful for who she is by the end. It's honestly very sweet material, so while she may be a hot mess, she's my hot mess.
You can have her. My hot mess has an eye patch. So, I've only played Crimson Flower once, which means I've only ever had this guy on my team once, so Alex, save me!
Piling all the heavy lifting on me here, yeah? Okay, fine. I get to talk about the glory of the almighty Patrick Sights. Bow before my smoldering tones and quake down to your knees. Oh man, between this guy and Dio, he must have fun with these types of roles.
I swear, this game got pretty much all the good voice actors. Though not getting Travis Willingham back for something really grinds my gears.
Anyway, Yuritsa. Even for how dense I was with regards to the Flame Emperor's identity, I could tell there was maybe a couple hundred things off about this guy at first. And of course, once everyone and their mother pieced together that he is the Death Knight, and promptly sent him packing thanks to Lysithea, the real avatar of death here, it's easy to mistake him as just a generic bad guy. But playing through Crimson Flower and getting to know Yuritsa, or as he was once known, Emil von Bartels, paints the story of a deeply traumatized figure. Y'all think Bernadetta's father sucks? I'll put it this way. I think maybe I'd develop a homicidal split personality to cope with the fact that my dad wanted to marry my half-sister too, then tortured to insanity when I refused and she fled. You do not do that to Mercy, and live. If Yuritsa rejects his humanity, so be it. He's more than earned the right if it means looking out for his big sister.
I really like Yuritsa with Mercedes. I'm more familiar with him as the Death Knight, who is basically Fire Emblem Lu Bu in Three Houses, but I'm not gonna lie, I cried a little when Mercedes mourned his death in the Blue Lion's route. She missed her baby brother, you could tell, and regretted not being able to rescue him. Seeing her try her best to bond with him in Crimson Flower was precious.
Well, I'm glad we're finally getting into the more uniformly complimentable characters. Is that a word? Anyway, I was kind of getting tired of flip-flopping between praising and criticizing.
And what better way to start than with the goodest of boys?
Good boy squad, assemble! Caspar! Raphael! Benny! Oh wait, wrong game. Anyways, Raphael! I absolutely adore this big old goober, even though he's dumber than the bag of rocks he likes to haul around. I have a soft spot for big guys who look like they could hug the stuffing out of you. Bonus points if they're blonde. And so, aside from Felix, Raphael was one of the ones I gravitated towards immediately.
You cannot convince me that this thing isn't a huge teddy bear. He is made for hugs. There really isn't much to Raphael, but honestly, I don't think there really needs to be. He will make it loud and clear to you, and often, that he loves meat and eating it, but he's a fundamentally kind man, so I'll forgive the typical Fire Emblem character gimmick, as it were. He never has a bad thing to say about anyone. He's all smiles, and he's a great, strong brother figure to Ignatz. But just because he's a good person doesn't mean he lacks baggage. As a commoner, it just means he's suffered differently and copes with it uniquely compared to the nobles and their political intrigue. His brotherly, protective attitude is out of necessity. Having lost his parents and having to raise a sister, he has to be strong to help them survive through medieval poverty. Kind of puts his love of food into perspective. Raphael's the kind of man who appreciates what he's got and has a blast enjoying life as a result.
I have to say that, while his intellect is lacking, he's perhaps one of the most emotionally mature of the entire game. His parents died a horrific, gruesome death while they were taking Ignatz's parents' place. They should not have been there. But he doesn't hold a grudge, he doesn't blame anyone, and he's not even angry or extremely sad about it anymore. I'm sure he misses them, but he seems to be one of the only characters in the entire game who can pick themselves up out of their trauma and move on in a positive way. He knows just how to make people smile. He's not afraid to ask for help. He knows his limitations and accept them. He's an incredible person. I don't know how to express it better than that, really. Except for maybe, think of it this way. Raphael can get over the death of his parents in a couple of years. Rhea still isn't over her mother's death, and it's been about 1,000. Which one has the emotional range of a teaspoon?
Hold up. This guy is just Prince Valium from Spaceballs. Like, is that a popular hairstyle these days? I blame that one Starburst ad.
No, get that thing away from me!
Okay, got the jokes about his looks and the laziness out of the way. What am I left with? Well, a surprisingly nuanced character, to be honest. Immediately, Linhardt is one of those characters you can immediately tell has something off about them. He loves his sleep. Oh, great, he's just like me. And he tends to not show a lot of interest in things if it's not an immediate subject of fascination. Okay, he's really starting to sound familiar. What's next? Does he get absorbed in said special interests to the point he forgets to eat or drink? Oh my god, he's neurodiverse. Whether or not Linhardt is ADHD or autistic or somewhere along that spectrum, Three Houses does a great job at painting Linhardt as someone not different for the sake of being different, but rather having unique needs due to how his brain is wired. His mind goes a mile a minute as he researches magic and crests, as reflected in his sheer versatility and strength as a magic user, and so when he needs to take a nap, that's not him being lazy, that's him being exhausted after carrying my butt through a mission.
I think Linhardt is an underrated character. I know some people have gravitated towards him due to his status as possibly neurodivergent, but there's also a kindness there that people don't highlight enough. I've said before that I relate more to kind characters than to bold ones, and Linhardt fits it for me, once you dig a little further than the naps and the research. He cares about people in his inner circle once you breach those walls, and it's pretty adorable. It's a support conversation with Lysithea where he shines for me, offering her a choice rather than coddling her. He wants her to live a full life, but also doesn't want her to fear her crests. It's a rather complex conversation, potentially with Lysithea's life on the line, and he approaches it in a kind manner. Even after she accused him of lacking empathy, he still cares and still wants to help her, whatever she chooses. Alex, can you lift this one too?
Yeah, okay. Like, honestly, out of all the Ashen Wolves, Yuri is the one who I'm least familiar with. My initial impression of him was that he's a less charming Claude, and I don't know, his design always felt kind of generic, I guess? Like, for some reason, I thought Balthus was the leader of the Ashen Wolves when they were first revealed. Imagine that timeline, Ari.
No, I don't think I will.
The thing is about Yuri, though, he plays his cards very close to his chest. He's secretive, underhanded, come to think of it, much like how Claude was said to be at first, before being a much more mellow character in practice, until Three Hopes. Most of what you end up learning about Yuri is only through supports, which paints the picture of a man who grew up desperately poor, with a desperately poor single mother. To Yuri, just getting by meant doing anything. Literally anything. Even if it meant killing others or even selling his own body to the rich. He's undoubtedly the biggest wretch in the whole cast. But ultimately, this has only served to give Yuri a genuinely noble heart beyond his cunning exterior. Maybe he does deserve to be the leader of the Ashen Wolves, the most downtrodden misfit of all, leading other black sheep so that they don't have to suffer as he did. I think he's a bit too aloof for me personally. It's harder to get to know him or have a true read on him compared to a lot of the cast, and I guess I'm not used to that. But overall, I'd say he's solid. Ari, what are you giggling at?
Look at him in Three Hopes. His little twinkle toesies, his fabulous Alucard cape if he bought it from Hot Topic, his Fallout chemical disco hairdo. He's just so deep, guys. So haunted by everything. It's so difficult. Please swoon into his arms. It's his only hope. I have mixed feelings on Seteth. On the one hand, I get his value to the story. He's the only remaining brother of the four saints of the church, the others having been turned into a bitter dragon and a large turtle for reasons. He is Rhea's advisor and knows almost all of her secrets. Jury's still out if he knew about the mom transplanting plan, though. And he serves as a voice of reason. On the other hand, I don't find him useful. The way I play, I already have a very reliable Wyvern Knight by the time he joins up, so I don't need him. And like his daughter, he's often shoved to the back of my PC box to rot forgotten. But that doesn't make him horrible, just makes him not quite right for me. Frankly, I think a lot of these B-tier people are Alex's people. They're just kind of humorous to me.
And my people, Seteth definitely is. He is unquestionably my favorite member of the Church of Saros. I have to admit, I was super fishy of Seteth at first, what with his stern attitude, his suspicious relationship with Flayn, and his green hair. But the moment I played through his and Flayn's side mission, Seteth made a lot more sense to me. Seth is such a serious man because he's scared. He's lost his wife, and when you learn his true identity, there's also the fact that he's lost his entire species. So when you see him talking to Flayn, truly his daughter, to visit his wife's grave and catch fish like old times, you see him for who he really is, a devoted, kind man who just wants to protect those he loves. There's something genuinely so heartwarming about finally seeing him smile after a whole game of him being all rules and giving you orders, and suddenly, him having something to ask of me becomes super endearing. Seth, you bet I'll beat up Edelgard if she trolls Flayn in Minecraft. Another thing that makes me love Seth is that despite being a leader in the Church of Seiros and, admittedly, taking part in its campaign of historical revision, he's a good foil to Rhea. He's much more composed and is even willing to kill Rhea himself if it means protecting his daughter and maintaining peace should she fly off the handle. And, speaking of, I think it's finally that time.
I have mixed emotions about this character. I think now is a great time to bring up the idea of a love-to-hate character. These are the characters that you dislike, often for valid story-driven reasons, but you like disliking that character. And Rhea certainly fits that bill for me. My first playthrough was Blue Lions, so you really see the good sides of her. She's the damsel in distress you have to rescue. Silver Snow, once again, she's the damsel in distress, then yada yada yada. Then I did Golden Deer, where she is still the damsel in distress, but then she gets a super awesome moment where she stops a nuke from killing you all. And you finally find out more about her backstory, and it's both tragic and psychotic when it comes to Byleth, and you feel squicky trying to romance her because you're a reincarnation of her mother. A switched up Electra complex?
But here's the thing about Rhea. On the surface, she may want the best things for Fodlan and has this vibe of the motherly figure that all the continent can feel protected under the literal wing of. Yet, the more you get to know her, and very early on too, she immediately outs herself as someone in desperate need of lying down in a fancy chair and speaking to the good Dr. Freud. Literally everything she does, everything, is motivated by her mother and siblings being butchered and dismembered to make weapons to genocide the rest of her people. The sheer breadth of the psychological defenses she puts up to poorly cope with her horrific trauma cannot be overstated. But what is mental health to the literal ruler of the world? Nothing. Just rewrite history so that the unspeakable tragedy that happened to your family and the resulting creation of heroes' relics and the crest system are blessings. And then execute anyone who dare say otherwise. Miss your mom and need to scratch that old itch of being loved? Well, you can bring her back to life because you have all that power. Just, literally experiment on grafting your mother's heart into infants to do it. But oh, mommy doesn't approve of you lashing out due to unchecked trauma. Oh, who cares? Let's burn down an entire friggin' city! Fire Emblem Three Houses! It's Incanto before Incanto, and like Incanto, turning red, everything everywhere all at once. Side note, Everything Everywhere All at Once is my favorite new movie I have seen in years, please watch it. Rhea's story ends up being a compelling tragedy of generationally traumatic events completely out of her control, leading to disaster in the present day.
Rhea, I don't like you. You cost Byleth their mother and their own singular soul by forcing them to play roommate to your long-dead child mother. You do not brook arguments or handle criticism very well. You hide from the world behind a pretty smile and a menacing true form, and I don't understand you. But you are not a bad character. Just a person I would never, ever, ever want to meet in real life.
Well, that was utterly horrendous. Thank you.
Do I have to do the pink-haired bit again? Because, I'll do it.
No. I will not tolerate any slander this time.
Oh, but I mean it this time.
No! Bad Ari.
Let me get this out of the way now. I do not like Hilda pretty much at all. This is a compromise between Alex's A tier and my D tier for her. She bothers me a lot. She's a lot like the girls I went to school with who bullied me because they could. She uses her looks and manipulation to make people think she's their friend. She uses others because she can. Yeah, she's like, I don't want to try because I'll fail anyways, and that way I'll never let anyone down. But that's just not responsible, and she's manipulating others through deceit and platitudes. I do not like how fake she is.
So, here's the thing with me and Hilda. I completely understand where you're coming from, Ari. I had similar experiences in elementary school where I'd been manipulated and outright bullied by some of the girls I was in class with, and all just to get some cheap laughs at my naivety. So, is it weird to say that I see none of that with Hilda?
Go on.
See, Hilda is lazy. She uses her charm to get others to do what she wants, but I don't know, having experienced my fair share of mean girls, she's simply not detestable enough to me. She never insults anyone or views them as lesser, she's just spoiled. She's the rich daughter who's been doted upon endlessly by her family, as we see in Three Hopes with her brother Holst. You can see how, with people waiting on hand and foot to be at her service, being served is just what she's used to. Spoiled rotten? I don't know, I prefer to think of her as spoiled sweet. Like, her relationship with Marianne is the exact opposite of the kind of friendship I'd expect this bubblegum-haired valley girl type to treasure. But it's so sweet. Marianne's timid and fragile, so it's kind of wonderful seeing the popular girl sticking up for someone so downtrodden. I think that speaks volumes about who Hilda really is at her core. But maybe that's just me.
And I can see that. She's amazing with Marianne, for one thing. The issue I have with Hilda is that I see far fewer of those moments than I do with other characters. For example, Lawrence goes out of his way to help people. See the support with Mercedes, as well as wanting to hire Ignatz to be his art appraiser so that he can pursue art as well as support his family. Whereas most of Hilda's supports in the original Three Houses were, "Oh, could you do this for me? Tee-hee-hee, mwahaha, you fell into my trap." I dislike dishonesty and fakeness, and unfortunately Hilda is both dishonest and fake a good chunk of the time to me. I can acknowledge that she may have a Binji-kun style personal growth thing happen later on, but I didn't enjoy her enough at the beginning to stick with her to the end.
Though I think one thing we can agree on is, she is a lot of fun in combat. Look at her, cheering her own name after mauling her enemies with a giant axe bigger than she is, and then complaining about how sweaty she is. Lady, you are literally covered in someone's blood! Your priorities might be a bit out of whack.
I can see someone's never been to the club on ladies' night. Oh boy, another DLC character. If you need me, I'll be over here writing my next Pokemon tier list.
Subtle. Anyway, Happy. Honestly, I don't have too much to add about her since I haven't really used her much as a unit. But I really like her personality. Having her be so down-to-earth and snarky makes her attitude contrast amusingly with some of the more fantastical units in Three Houses. She's especially a great foil to her friend Constance and how boisterous she can be. Not to mention, I think her design is super pretty. The red hair and dark skin combo is immediately distinctive. I will say that while Happy does have an in-story reason for needing to be so chill, that being that her emotions are literally destructive and she has to rein them in, she doesn't really need that justification. She's just refreshingly different for this game, and that's enough for me.
So you can't play this guy. But if you could, I'd put him here because I love him so much. I played this game for the first time on my honeymoon. We rented a cabin in the mountains in November. There was snow, and it was cozy inside with a fire. It was super romantic. And what did we do that was so romantic? Josh had to comfort me as I sobbed into his shoulder when my favorite orange papa died. I still cry a little to this day, and I've played through it at least 20 times. He is strong, caring in his brisk way, his voice is chocolate-covered gold, and he just did what he thought was best for Violet because he loves you! I'm gonna cry again!
Oh my gosh, there are so many characters in this game!
You know, if you want to back out now and let me go solo, that's fine. Still get an A tier for effort.
I'm going to finish this list out of spite now.
So when I first met this guy, I thought he was just a fancier Sylvain. And while I wasn't completely wrong, he is a flirt and he is fancy, that certainly isn't all he is. Lawrence has White Knight Syndrome bad, but not in a bad way. A lot of nobles would be all too willing to sacrifice the commoner to save his own hide, including both Lawrence and Ferdinand's fathers. But Lawrence is of the opinion that a noble should serve and protect the commoners, not the other way around. And unfortunately, that belief is to the extreme where he refuses help from commoners and kind of insults them. His support conversation with Mercedes is very telling. He does everything in his power to help her when she is injured, but then minimizes her offers of reciprocation and eligibility for marriage because she is a commoner. And I find that fascinating, if a little condescending.
Oh, Lawrence, you poor devil. All of your unique equipment is constantly getting sent over to Lysithea like your second banana. For a while, I admit I kind of found Lawrence to be just that. A joke. One of my lesser picks of the nobles. Though, after talking about him with Ari as we came up with this list structure, I've definitely got to give him some credit where credit's due. One thing that does give him a major edge over someone like Sylvain is that, well, he's kind of dumb, or does he just lack common sense?
Commoner sense?
How dare you make sense?
Commoner sense?
Stop!
He's got moments where he's dense and a flirt and chases women he thinks are worthy, but I never get the sense that he acts that way out of malevolence. He's just kind of a fop who doesn't really know better is all. And I have to admit, his foppishness is pretty entertaining. Take his support with Manuela, where she accidentally finds a poem of his. This poor dork is embarrassed and doesn't know how to react when confronted about something so emotionally sincere. That's kind of how I look at Lawrence, just a big old dork. Look at his face and his hair. He's like if a beautiful Greek statue went to a boarding school, and then 5 years later got a really bad haircut. Seriously, he could slap somebody with that length while dramatically swooshing his hair.
For me, despite his white knighting, which he does improve upon as he matures, his kindness is extremely attractive to the point where he's my number 2 guy in this game. His support with Lysithea is just heartwarmingly sweet. He's absolutely mortified that Lysithea could die and does everything in his power to try and help extend her life and even persuade her not to lose hope. I just love this boy so much. Someone give him a really highfalutin cookie, a macaron or something. I also think his voice is just beautiful.
Pour one out for Ben Diskin. Always my number 1. Or is that number 1?
I hate you.
Wait. Since I already sung the praises of Robbie Damon earlier, would that make him my number 2?
I despise you.
Please, tell me, why are the hoes having the mad? Hoes are the equipment for the gardening. I am demanding an explanation.
Well, Petra, when a mommy video game series and a daddy fandom hate each other very much,
they give birth to memes.
Hoes mad! Hoes mad! Hoes mad!
Hoes mad! Hoes mad!
Anyway.
Petra is just Fire Emblem Starfire, not from Teen Titans Go, you heathens! And I adore her. First off, her glow-up from both games is just primal gorgeousness. Her color palette is amazing, and I just can't get enough of how she carries herself. She is a queen, and you will respect her.
Oh, don't mind if I do.
Like, yeah, easy pick for biggest glow-up over the time skip. Petra's a stone-cold fox!
Down, boy.
But beyond my male gaze, her time skip costume actually reflects her character perfectly. Dignified, but wild and dangerous if pushed. In battle, she's a total beast, dealing crit after crit with her unique skill, which made her an immediate favorite in early game for me. People love to label her as just Starfire for being a kind soul with an awkward speech pattern, but bear in mind that she's also royalty, and royalty to a vassal state of the Empire with a ton of emotional baggage. Her final support with Caspar is utterly chilling. When faced up front about Caspar's father killing her father, she admits that she does feel lingering hatred to Caspar, and that she could kill him swiftly, if only she wanted to. Thus, her kindness is a lot more commendable, a conscious choice over a brutal, if human and potentially even understandable, alternative.
For me, I play her as a Wyvern Rider, and she's amazingly strong and fairly accurate. She goes zoom around the battlefield and myrtleizes things. It's satisfying. And here's something I don't think gets talked about enough. The differences between her academy uniform and her post-time skip outfit. Her uniform is rigid, it's tight to her hips and legs, which likely makes her feel constricted. She's also wearing heels, which probably inhibits her ability to do things she'd probably enjoy, like climb trees or run, for example. Her hair is also tied up in a braid. Compare the stuffy uniform, which she wore under the scrutiny of the Empire as their guest, versus her freedom outfit. She's free, she's wild, she's herself, and it's a beautiful transformation. The designers went hard on the symbolism for Petra, and the English major in me is happy.
Praiseth the ultimate glass cannon, destroyer of Patrick's sights, the deliverer of one shot upon one shot, the babyface who would probably and capably vaporize you on the spot for insinuating she is baby. It's Lysithea. And I kind of regret reducing her to just her battle prowess because that power is most of what makes Lysithea such an endearingly tragic character. This poor girl seems initially very standoffish and bullheaded, but the moment you learn why she's that way, you kind of realize that, yeah, if you only had a few years left of your life because a bunch of dubstep mole people wanted to turn you into a living weapon, I think you probably wouldn't want to spend your days with people who don't take you seriously. Connecting back to my earlier refrain, being nice is different from being good. And unless you really get to know her, Lysithea's not a very nice person, but a very, very good one, with a strong sense of justice and a powerful drive to change the world that did her dirty. You can really see why the Officers Academy would have been such an appealing option for her.
From a design standpoint, seriously, she is gorgeous. Her glow-up is stunning. I love the shocking white hair and albino pink eyes, complemented by my favorite color for her dress and her hair veil. Just gorgeous. I want to hug her, but then I'm too afraid for my life to follow through. Poor Lysithea has some of my absolute favorite supports. We've touched on a few with Linhardt and Lawrence, which I do think are her best, but I think one of her sweeter moments is with Raphael. Hard not to fall victim to his cuddly charm, and his fluff kind of sticks to her prickles. She's legit one of my favorite units, and a character that is very good as a foil for others to allow them to grow and learn more about the world. There are moments where her know-it-allness kind of gets to me, which is why she's not on my mandatory child rescue list, but she's still incredible, and her support with Lawrence is well within my top 3. The men in my life have fallen for her charms, it seems. Forgive me, Father, for I could not save them.
Excuse me? I don't need your salvation. If it's wrong, I don't want to be right.
I have a similar problem with Dorothea I do with Sylvain. And Hilda. Combined. First of all, when I said I dislike flirty characters, I meant it. Doesn't matter the gender. If you play with another person's feelings like they're a game of tic-tac-toe, then you're on my hit list. I am an equal opportunity hater, get on my level, scrub. At the very least, Dorothea, like Sylvain, is very open with her flirtatious ways and about how she wants to marry up. Why she decided to join a school to kill people rather than just go to a few debutante balls, I don't understand, but I didn't write her. On the other side of the I tolerate you because you're a good unit coin, she also comes across as manipulative and condescending, a bit like Hilda. Both facets of her put her directly at the top of my go away pile, and yet I agreed to let her in A tier. Why? She's a really good unit. She is my go-to dancer if I don't have Marianne. She's an amazing magic user, and she gets meatier. She has saved my hide more times than I'd like to admit, and she's fantastic as a frontline push with the right battalion.
Meanwhile, for my money, Dorothea is easily one of my favorite members of the cast, period. Beyond being a total stunner, from her iconic cap at the start of the game to her elegant ball gown later, Dorothea honestly strikes me as one of the most realistic characters in Three Houses, and one deeply tied into the themes of the Black Eagles route and the game as a whole. In a lot of ways, she's a microcosm of the unjust society that Edelgard is fighting against, and in a much more realistic manner than magic crests and experiments. Having grown up as a dirt-poor street urchin, Dorothea came to resent the inequality and hypocrisy of the society she was born into. When the Adrestian nobility decided it suddenly loved her when she became famous as a beautiful starlet, I kind of imagined the gears turning in her head something like this. Well, where were these adoring people when I was desperate for food and shelter? Was I not enough for them then? As a person worthy of basic dignity rather than as a headlining act? That's a lot to take in when you're young, so I can kind of understand that she's still unpacking a lot of personal issues. And because of this baggage, Dorothea does start out pretty mean to certain characters with a noble upbringing like Lawrence or Sylvain.
The second one deserves it.
Although, I will admit, I chuckled at how brutally blunt she was telling Ferdinand that she hates him. Poor guy. Not his fault she calls it like she sees it. Turn down for what? Her more mean girl tendencies do give way over the time skip to a much more insightful and empathetic woman, regularly mourning her fallen comrades, even Ferdinand, regardless of whether or not she did any supports with him. By the end of her supports with him, Lawrence, and others, you start to see her understand people as more well-rounded individuals rather than exclusively through the classist lens she was forced to view love and connection through. Dorothea's an incredibly flawed person, and she knows it. She'd be a major hypocrite if she didn't. After all, she too is a byproduct of Fodlan and all of its flaws. That self-awareness is a huge part of why I love her so much. She's not so arrogant that she wouldn't let herself take in new perspectives. You asked earlier, Ari, why she'd even want to go to the Officers' Academy, and I think it's not dissimilar to why someone like Lysithea probably did. Dorothea probably could settled with a rich husband and continued being a star in the theater troupe scene, but that's selfish and empty in the grand scheme of a broken world that needs good people to do the right thing, to improve the lives of the poor and the needy, and to ensure the best for those she loves.
And finally, we have the last Ashen Wolf, Constance.
This is the song that never ends. It just goes on and on, my friend.
Can it not?
Kidding me?
Constance is easily the most distinctive of the Ashen Wolves. Though she'd probably electrocute me from miles away if I said anything contrary to the glory of House Nouvelle! Constance is definitely one of the most fun characters in Three Houses. I mean, seeing her boast about how awesome she is and her dedication to rebuilding her house, it's just infectious. Not to mention, she's a dedicated mage with access to some spells that previously were not well optimized to their original wielders. So her addition as DLC was very much welcome in that regard. I'll say this though, there is something about Constance that's simultaneously the most interesting thing about her, and probably the weakest. That being, she has what is often described as a split personality. It's a little vague about what exactly her damage is, since her morose and depressing traits that show up whenever she's in sunshine result in some likes and dislikes being outright contradictory with her true persona. However, she still answers to being called Constance. I admit, on the surface, it does kind of make Constance feel like she has a bit of a shtick to her, like so many other Fire Emblem characters do. Yet, when you look into Constance's backstory, it's pretty clear that this mental illness is a side effect of her being the sole survivor of her house being slaughtered.
Is it healthy? No. Is it healthier than some of the others' reactions to having their families murdered? Technically, yes.
It's as the great Travis Touchdown said, everyone deals with grief differently, right? Some people develop split personalities. Others crack skulls.
Why is the horny otaku our pinnacle for philosophy?
Moe.
While it is sometimes comical to see just how black and white her different sides are, there is genuine pathos at how badly poor Constance hates herself out of survivor's guilt. Like, her depression arguably surpasses Marianne at times in its severity. What's worse, it's hinted that it might not just be survivor's guilt that Constance's mind is suffering from. While the specific words are never used, it's hinted in her support conversation with Edelgard that House Nouvelle, in its quest to continue passing down the crest of Noah, might have poisoned the family well by keeping the crest a little too close to home, if you catch my drift. Wait, Constance is blonde. She's the last survivor of a noble house. She rides winged fantasy creatures into battle. Good lord, she's a Targaryen.
Can't wait to see her burn a mofo alive. I'll get popcorn.
Don't bother. The end result would probably not be worth it.
Here he is, by far my favorite of the house second in commands.
To be fair, your other options were the Babadook or Regina George.
And he is here to be praised, dang it! The dude needs all the love. I swear he is starved for affection from someone other than his Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs liege. So aside from being one of the few survivors of the Dusker Purge, you know, the whole killing spree the kingdom went on after the people of Dusker were accused of killing the king, even though they didn't because it was those slithering b****s and that limp little brother.
Are you okay?
No, just... The whole tragedy of Dusker makes me sad, and Dedue had to pay the price for it. His whole family was slaughtered, and Dimitri absconded with him to safety. He is only spared by Dimitri's goodwill, which is so wrong because he is one of the kindest and most sincere people in Fodlan. He is gentle, he loves flowers, his smile just lights up my whole day. He is a glorious being of light and I will always protect him. Y'all, I was freaking out for the few chapters he was missing during my first run. I thought he was actually dead. Not knowing if I did something wrong, I went back and played with a few different dialogue options to see if I could save him. That's how much I like him. I will also take a second to say that he is absolutely drop dead gorgeous as well. Now go ahead, Alex, before I drool all over my mic.
No, I'm drooling right there with you. Dedu's voice is smooth like freshly tapped honey. I could listen to him forever.
That's it. We are officially Dedu Simps. Bring in the squealing K-pop fangirls. Bring in the dancing lobsters. Something that didn't really come up in my crushes video is that I have a serious weakness for glasses.
Is that why we're putting Ignatz in A tier?
No, it's just a nice bonus.
I'm gonna be real, I did not like Ignatz at first, and for the same reasons that I'm still not fond of, say, Ash or Annette. Again, he just seemed like the typical milquetoast nice guy. And look at him, look at this glasses-wearing wimp with his green hair. Give me something to work with here, or are you gonna bore me to death like the other—
Let me paint you a picture!
I have greatly misjudged you. Please, kill away Ignatz.
So, leave it to Ignatz to teach me not to judge a book by its cover, because he might just be a total beast. Ignatz, when classed as an assassin, will deal out crit after crit to your enemies and make them cry like deep silver when the review embargo on Mighty No. 9 is lifted. Woo! Half a decade old meme reference! Not bad for someone who's really only at the Officers Academy because being a knight would look good on his resume and would rather be a painter. But funnily enough, his prowess in battle actually means he would probably be a very good knight, especially coupled with his chivalrous attitude. Ignatz is definitely someone I can see riding into battle and rescuing a maiden fair. Oh, and maidens he will get! Because Ignatz is coming to paint them their portraits, compare them to the goddess, and have them coming home having conveniently forgotten about their undergarments. Look, I may jest a little, but Ignatz has a non-zero chance of betting an actual dragon out of sheer kind and polite charm. Y'all have nothing on this sweet, smooth-talking gentleman.
For me, Ignatz was the first one I accidentally killed on my first playthrough of Blue Lions. I didn't recruit him, and when I killed him at the Battle of Gronder, I burst into tears and wanted to stop it and play it over.
Oh god, you too? In Crimson Flower, he was my first kill in Act 2. Why does the universe hate this man?
I don't know, he's baby! The horrors of war weren't real until I killed this sweet little bowl cut cutie. And I felt awful to the point where I played Golden Deer on my next playthrough solely so that wouldn't happen again. Ignatz is the preciousest of beings. He doesn't want to fight, he wants to paint and bring joy and light to the world. But because he's the second son of merchants and they aren't doing so hot, he was pushed into a lucrative field. I can't quite relate to being pushed into a career I don't want, but I do feel that financial struggle pretty hard. But just let him paint, guys. He's such a sweetie and deserves it. I just want to braid his unfortunate looking hair and tell him it'll all be okay because he worries constantly. Something I also feel in my very soul. Ow.
There's something happening here, but you don't know what it is. Do you, Ferdinand?
We all have that person in our lives. Someone well-meaning, but maybe born in a tight bubble, and when isolated from the struggles of those who aren't us, they often flounder about helplessly, watching as their attempts to understand and help out the stranger fail despite their best efforts. So, when I look at I am Ferdinand von Ayer, the gloriously haughty meme man himself, I feel like he's someone I've known before. Hell, been before. Ferdinand, at his core, is a very good man who a lot of people sadly write off before they know him because he's admittedly out of touch with the struggles of others. I've seen people describe him as kind of autistic, and I can see it. His social skills are lacking, and combined with his excessive pride as a noble, he can come across as a jerk. But the truth is, Ferdinand never has a bad thing to say about anyone, unless they're violent conquerors, and he's helpful to a fault. He feels incredible responsibility as a noble to lift others up, and while his ways of doing it don't often go the way he thinks they will, he's defined by just how hard he tries. He strives to do right by those he cares about, whether it's helping Dorothea unlearn some of her biases, or giving Manuela reassurance that she is still a worthwhile person and talent. He's like a big puppy. He wants to love you, and even with rejection after rejection, he will love you, darn it, because he is Ferdinand von Eyre. And that's just what he does.
Here's another one I hated at first. I saw him and Lawrence both as dandies too out of touch that I wasn't going to be able to relate to. Plus, he had a weird Edelgard obsession that I was not here for. So Ferdinand had an uphill battle with me. And while I still roll my eyes whenever he tries to compete with Edelgard, because why would you want to compete with Ivan the Terrible? His genuine concern and love for others won me over. While I don't think he's as primly precious as Lawrence, there is an earnestness about him that other nobles lack. He's so gung-ho about being a good citizen, a good prime minister, not for his own glory, but for the glory of his country. He wants to make life better for people, acknowledges that he is in a position that could allow him to do so, and does his best to act on it. He is to be admired. Especially his hair, so beauteous. Reminds me of Arthur from that one Fairly Odd Parents episode after he took off his glasses.
I love Ferdinand, and I'm glad that we were lucky enough to hear his English voice one more time in Three Hopes. Rest in peace, Billy Kametz. You were taken from us too soon. But your flame burned brightly with every role you ever played.
Okay, so we've covered some dark themes previously, but I do feel I need to throw out a trigger warning here, especially because of certain interpretations of this character's actions and presence in the game. If you are uncomfortable with the concept of unaliving oneself, please skip to this time. Okay, with that out of the way, Marianne needs help. And if you don't recruit her, or if you aren't in Golden Deer, it is implied that she doesn't get it.
I think I'll leave you with this one, Ari. Not that I don't like Marianne, but I can tell she means a lot to you. So do her justice.
I will endeavor to do so. She deserves it. While I was not cursed with an irremovable magical tattoo that could turn me into a giant Komodo dragon, I was Marianne at one point in my life. Hard to imagine when I'm so loud and cool now, right? But once upon a time, I had thoughts similar to Marianne. I didn't want to go home because I felt like I was not wanted. I was isolated at school, at home, my best friend had moved away, and I was bullied mercilessly. I wasn't worth talking to, wasn't worth being around, just like Marianne thinks of herself. Now, that's not why I like her. I was drawn to her immediately because I felt her in my core being, but what I love is how she blooms. With the love and respect of Byleth and her friends, she grows into someone with a purpose and the determination to go on. She's still struggling with her depression, she's not magically better, but she looks for ways to manage it rather than wallow in it. And I find her inspiring. You can really see her growth in her appearance. Initially, she wears baggier clothes that cover her up, her eyes are sunken, and she hides her face behind thick bangs and side curls. As she ages, she allows herself to wear more fitting clothing. Her eyes and complexion look healthy, and her hair is pulled back so you can see her face. She's an incredible example of storytelling done by just appearance and design. Oh, and she's also an incredible magic user, and I love making her a dancer so she can use Levin swords. But what gets me is that she went from a young lady who prayed for death and was too scared to make it a reality herself, to one who wanted to fight another day just for her friends. All right, I fought this for a long time. Originally, this character was in D tier. I hated them. I despised them. I wanted nothing to do with them. But after several long conversations with the Green Scorpion, I came around to a similar position that I have with Rhea. Edelgard is a great character for the most part, but I'd never ever want to meet her.
Oh boy, Edelgard. For a time, I would have called her my absolute favorite character in this game. A hero, going to bat against a horribly corrupt system and taking back the world. Can you tell that Crimson Flower was my first playthrough? Because, you mentioned Rhea, and, man, they're like two sides of the same cuckoo coin. Like Rhea, Edelgard is a byproduct of some serious trauma. Namely, the same horrible experimentation that shortened Lysithia's lifespan, the murder of her 11 siblings at the hands of those same experiments, and being chained up for Lord knows how long. Meanwhile, being the daughter of the Emperor, she's seen firsthand the dual nature of life under the crest hierarchy and all the suffering the disenfranchised have gone through. So, on paper, a revolutionary with real power that can upend this entire crisis is genuinely admirable. But in practice, she does a heckin' conquest and invasion. Yeah, I distinctly remember being genuinely concerned after going down her route about whether or not I did the right thing. And while the power high of slaying an insane dragon and tearing down her crest system was a blast, the more routes I experienced in this game, the more my answer to that question became a resounding nope, I screwed up big time.
Did you at least feel good about killing Gilbert, Cyril, and Catherine?
Wait, never mind. Now that you mention it, I regret nothing. But Edelgard, on the other hand, probably should regret everything.
Before we get to the compliments, I have to admit I find her a bit of a hypocrite in many ways. Firstly, why the hell is she working with the people who traumatized her? She's an imperial princess / empress. She has enough resources and power without them. Frankly, I'd take them out first, and considering that we never actually see her take them out, I just feel like they've brainwashed her enough so that she will be loyal to them. Not only that, she wants to do away with the nobility and have a merit-based society, but firstly, who determines that merit? If we were to go by morality, she and Hubert would be the first on the chopping block since they caused the death of thousands. Intelligence? Linhart and Lysithea would rule. Is she going to give up her power when she achieves that end? She has made no such indication, so does that mean that she sees herself as the pinnacle of merit? What she's aiming for is something like a republic or a democracy, and yet she'd still be the head, so that still isn't what she claims she's aiming for. Unless she actually takes steps to give up her power because she didn't earn it, she was born into it, I can't fully take her seriously.
I smell a however.
However, she is very, 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 very good at what she does. Infiltrating the academy, gaining the knowledge and skills of her enemies, and manipulating the situations in the game to her favor as the Flame Emperor, those are some boss moves. I can feel Sun Tzu doing a celebratory polka at his grave. She's very intelligent and uses every resource to her advantage, while still playing her cards very close to her chest. Her design is gorgeous. We disagree on the Empress horns, but I like them. And if I had the time and money, I would cosplay her in that battle ball gown. Edelgard is complex, and I love to hate her. I do hate her, but I love her for making me hate her. It's a weird relationship. I need to call my therapist. You know, we've talked about glorified, gorgeous, charming, and other more unsavory traits. Time for the sexy, because that's totally what S tier means, right? S is for sexy.
I mean, in this case, you're not entirely wrong considering who's on first. While Seteth is my favorite member of the Church of Seiros, out of all the party members not affiliated with an individual house, Shamir rocks the crown and then some. Everything about Shamir is just cool, and in step with her no-nonsense attitude as a mercenary. For starters, her character design is easily one of my favorites in Three Houses. The short haircut is perfect, since as a sniper, she wouldn't want any lengthy locks in her eyes getting in the way of taking out her marks. Her efficiency is also reflected in her relatively simple armor and clothing, with short fabric trails that make her almost look aerodynamic, fitting for the swift precision of her arrows. And her overall personality, because Shamir doesn't speak much, but whenever she does, she makes every word count.
Sleep in the dirt.
Best kill quote in Three Houses. Fight me.
I also share the opinion that Shamir is just objectively sleek and badass. I enjoy me some strong silent type, but it isn't as often seen on a woman, and it suits her very well. I do feel that the assassin character being the quiet one is a little played out, but that's not all she is. She can be witty, candid, and caring in her own way. She'll teach Cyril, be open about her ambitions with Claude, and she'll teach goofy old Raphael to be more sneaky. She's often the straight man in conversations, but that sort of adds to her charm. I kind of see her as the one regular person in a sea of weirdos, and she looks around, sighs, and resigns herself to fit in with them.
Another thing I appreciate about Shamir is that while she does start out working for the Church of Seiros, she's not beholden to Lady Rhea's every beck and call. Unless, of course, Shamir feels Rhea has earned her service. You could say Shamir is just in it for Shamir and following the money, but I prefer to think it comes down to how fluid and very gray the morality in Three Houses is, especially thanks to Byleth's influence on the house leaders and recruits depending on the path chosen. Whether or not she sides with the Church or Edelgard and Crimson Flower is ultimately up to whoever she feels has crossed the line.
I really do wonder what she sees in Catherine, though. Shamir's too good for you, Catherine. You can't sit with us at the cool kids table. So, you know how I said Marianne was like little Ari? Meet college Ari, the newly diagnosed insomniac basket case with a bad case of generalized anxiety disorder, clinical depression, and no prescriptions to fix it yet.
I'm simultaneously glad I didn't know you and very sorry I didn't.
So are most of my friends, and so are Bernadetta's, I bet. Bernadetta is a mess, but she has been incredibly abused by her father, so it's understandable. At first, her wild flailing and general nervousness is a bit off-putting, I admit. But the second she says unmarriageable, something flicks on in your brain that there's something really wrong. And as you get to know her, the intense agoraphobia makes so much more sense. She's an introvert who truly wanted to be left alone, but was physically tortured because she wasn't the perfect doll for her father. And while I was not abused to that measure, I do feel the pressure she felt to be perfect to impress people who didn't seem to truly love her. I was that basket case. And some days, I still am. My relationship with my family is rocky too, so I relate. And while Marianne grows up much more obviously, Bernadetta's growth is still encouraging and heartwarming.
Okay, I admit I do feel like Bernadetta can be a bit much with how over-the-top her anxious freakouts can be. But I don't mind overall because, one, it can be entertaining to see just how skittish she is, and two, on a much more serious note, anxiety can be that extreme. In fact, I know multiple people with cases of anxiety that are on par with or even more severe than what Bernadetta is going through. Whether it be generalized anxiety, social anxiety, or adjacent categories like trauma or obsessive-compulsive disorders, this kind of mental illness can be outright disabling. At first, it seemed to me like Bernadetta never coming out of her room was like the typical Fire Emblem, what's my personality gimmick thing. But within mere minutes of meeting her, it became genuinely upsetting when I read her likes and dislikes, and it mentioned her overbearing father. To my immediate appreciation, the story and Bernadetta's supports do not downplay her disgusting treatment at the hands of her father, and how her anxiety is shown to be clearly manifested from his abusive parenting. Early trauma, especially stemming from close relationships where there should be an expectation of trust and some security, can do serious damage to a person's well-being that can last for decades, and perhaps even for one's whole life if it's left untreated.
On a positive note, I love her design. Purple is my favorite color, shocker, I know, and she looks adorable in it, from her messy, mousy academy look to her absolute glow-up adult look. She looks elegant, but also a little off, like she's grown up but is still a little awkward underneath it all. It really suits her. Though her 3 houses look woof. Oh, honey. Did you get into a fight with Von Twirling Killer's arm turbines and lose?
But I think that's enough picking on Bernie, because holy crap is she an amazing unit. I mean, leave it to Garreg Mach's expert at hiding herself to best even Shamir as a sniper. But it's bananas just how many incredible abilities she has. Deadeye means her attack range is unparalleled. Plus, her unique skill, Persecution Complex, means that she'll deal brutal damage to her enemies if she is not at full health. Risky? Maybe, but don't let her get hit after that first time, and a Bernadetta with beefy enough stats can become a veritable one-woman army. I honestly felt guilty using her in my first playthrough because I was barely giving anyone else the time of day with Bernie plowing through everything.
I personally also make her into a horse riding class, give her the stride battalion so she can boost the movement, then move again and hit hard.
Wah-wah-wee-wah. It's my wife!
You have excellent taste.
I know.
First of all, I want her academy hair. I've always loved thick, luxurious, light hair like she has, and she's just gorgeous. With that out of the way, Mercedes is perhaps the best buffer character in the whole roster, both in supports and in battle. Speaking on her supports, she's often the counterbalance to some of the more extreme personalities. She gets Dimitri, who is known for having quite intense conversations about death and the tragedy of Dusker, to sew. She makes a cold-hearted, dead-inside killer like Yuritsa a puddle of mush. She makes Sylvain likable. There is no one she can't improve, and she's an amazing mood booster. That being said, she herself is just the slightest bit bland sometimes, in my opinion. While she is lovely, she's also kind of just has one setting. She's the mom friend, and she's almost stuck there.
I prefer to think of Mercedes as collected, shall we say? She has plenty of personality to go around, it's just a bit more downplayed. She's a playful tease sometimes, and she has a tendency to stand her ground with a snarky side whenever she's dealing with someone like Lawrence who doesn't always behave appropriately. Yet her stable, calming presence is her defining trait, tying deeply into her history and the values she holds. This poor lady has gone through an unspeakable amount of suffering in her life, from the destruction of her house to her stepfather's atrocious intentions towards her and the fallout from that. I like to think she willingly chooses to keep it together so that those she interacts with have the rock in their lives that she never had. Life can be chaotic, unpredictable, and downright unfair. And sometimes if you're beat down by it all, having someone there as a consistent presence to help you up and take care of you if you need it can make all the difference toward your ability to go on day after day. After all, why else would she be at the Officers Academy, let alone as a medical unit? Her character is downright saintly, and that desire to be a strengthening presence for the people she loves translates gameplay-wise into one of the most impressive units in all of Three Houses.
Josh already talked about her a whole bunch in Top 15 Healers, go watch it, but her innate skill Live to Serve makes her the most broken healer that the game has. She just does not die if you use her right. Any white magic spell is just god tier in her hands. Nosferatu combined with Live to Serve, she'll heal everything she took. Physic, great range, and she heals a whole lot. Fortify. Fortify! This woman can heal almost the whole army if you position her right. I also give her the Dancer Battalion sometimes just in case no one needs the heal so she can act as a second dancer if need be, since she often stays near the mid to rear lines. She's literally the unit I take on every single file no matter what.
And also, I just want to say I won't hear anyone talking crap about Mercy's time skip design. Okay, like, I get it, she doesn't have the iconic hair anymore, but look at her! Look at her! Look at her smile! She's so pretty and pure and wholesome, and she makes my heart melt! Wah-wah-wee-wah, it's my husband!
You're straight, I think.
I mean, I am, but I cannot guarantee that would last long if Claude ever smooth-talked me.
Okay, look. I think my girlfriend would probably banish me to the couch for eternity if I didn't put Claude in S tier. But frankly, I was gonna do it anyway. Claude embodies one of my absolute favorite character archetypes, the Trickster. He's an absolute charmer with a silver tongue, which perhaps should immediately give him a red flag as suspicious and untrustworthy, but you'll find that Claude is just that natural at being charming, probably because he's genuinely a good person. At least relatively speaking in this world where students fight wars for the Pope. When he's able to charm the pants off you, that means you don't really bat an eye when he's skulking around the library for information or negotiating plans and ceasefires. And while Claude's a pragmatist, sure, especially in Three Hopes where he can be downright ruthless with his strategies and manipulations, he's extremely skilled with diplomacy above all else. To him, life has never been straightforward. For example, if he told people outright that he was actually Almiran, there would be immediate war. Imagine that, someone who lies and cheats for peace. Looks damn fine doing it.
It's called chaotic good, darling. Well, I find Claude charming enough. That's not why I enjoy him. I enjoy the fact that he takes the middle road, navigating dicey political situations with his brains and with a dash of professor-provided optimism. He wants social change like Edelgard, but doesn't resort to her methods, and honestly winds up giving everyone the best outcome possible. Except Dimitri. He still dies crazy and alone, which makes me sad. He is also very concerned about people in his own roundabout way. He comes off a little standoffish in the beginning, mostly relying on jokes and deflection, but when push comes to shove, he really does care about the people around him. His support path with Marianne is heartwarming and one of my favorites of his. Now, he is still not my favorite. I personally can take or leave the sly dog personality type, but those little moments of genuineness makes all of his smarm bearable.
So you did the double S rank again?
Yup. Third time.
Is anyone surprised at this point?
Doubt it. If they know anything about me, they know it's Dimitri. Did anyone expect any different? Raise your hand, because you need to leave.
Hey, don't look at me. I am certainly not disagreeing that he is the best. Like, at all.
Okay, full disclosure, Dimitri was the one character in Three Houses who both Ari and I put in S tier. Because, oh boy, do I love me some male characters with baggage. It's almost like my favorite video game was written by Yoko Taro or something.
Isn't that hilarious? Doesn't it make you laugh?
Anyway, Dimitri. Plain and simple, he has the most elaborately constructed and emotionally satisfying character arc in the entire game. And it's not even close. See, most characters in Three Houses usually have 2 character portraits tops, one for the start of the game and one for the time skip. Dimitri is the only playable character with 3. Technically 4, if you count his non-playable appearance in Crimson Flower where he has no eye patch. Over the course of Azure Moon, Dimitri ends up changing so much as a person that his portrait noticeably cleans up as his mental health slowly creeps back to normal from the horrifying murder pit it ended up in at the start of Part 2. Strap in, folks. I think Ari's gonna be here for a while with the details.
I have gone over this magnificent specimen of psychosis very thoroughly in my crushes list. I adore him. I want to save him. He has the best of intentions, but a very warped and damaged perspective of the world. He's loyal to a fault, well, many, many, many faults, and has one of the worst cases of survivor's guilt I've ever seen, and who can blame him? The massacre that took his father and a good chunk of his friends and loved ones from him left him the lone survivor. That same massacre caused a fracturing of his kingdom that he was not ready to rule yet, and the only parental figure he had left vanished that same night. He is broken, bruised, and battered, and while he hides it well for a while, he cracks when he finds out his childhood friend and stepsister was involved in all of it.
And oh, good lord, does he crack. The famous "kill every last one of them" line is the tip of the iceberg. His utterly broken laughter after seeing Edelgard's face behind the Flame Emperor's mask, and his dead-eyed stare as he crushes a man's skull with his bare hands, can be best described as haunting. Almost literally when he tells the player about his delusions of hearing the ghosts of his fallen family and comrades telling him to do unspeakable things in revenge. Serious props go to Chris Hackney's performance. He sells how utterly depraved Dimitri becomes in these moments with an urgent but almost gleeful tone, conveying how his damaged mind believes his actions to be noble. It's like the Fire Emblem equivalent of someone who's clearly not well, trying to convince you that, everything's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's all fine. My father's fine. And you know what? She'll be fine too. Once I behead.
Alex, this is not the time for you to be an actor too. I don't need 2 scary boys here.
Okay, I'll stop. I mean, I do play up the scariness of his performance, but above all else, I adore the moments where Dimitri is vulnerable. The way his voice quavers with uncertainty as the weight of his sins hits him like a truck when he considers whether or not he'd ever make a good king after all he's been through and everything he's done. It's the moment in this game that got me misty-eyed.
Look beyond his trauma, though, and you do see a kind and gentle young man who genuinely wants good things for those around him, the living and the dead. He wants safety and peace for his country, love and laughter for his friends, and a bright future for his bride if he takes one. He doesn't feel he deserves those things, but we work on that with him during his route. Yes, he's still very damaged and flawed, but he acknowledges he wasn't in a healthy place and actively works to better himself for the kingdom. He thinks with more clarity and allows others to express their opinions without snapping their heads off. His growth looks like a heartbeat on a monitor in the hospital, starting very mellow, super high-octane murder boy, down low when he's sunken into his pit of despair, and back to a more stable, mellow Dimitri. It's fantastic writing they pulled off with him, especially with Marianne. She's not even a blue lion, and she has my favorite conversation with him because they both feel burdened and haunted by others who died instead of them, and they understand each other, and I love this game. I'm gonna cry. I love it so much.
Yeah, I guess he's also a pretty good unit in battle, too.
I give him a bow and arrow and make him a bow knight rather than keep him as a lord. It works pretty good, I guess.
Look, who gives a crap? It's Dimitri. You're here for the story with this character.
Amen. Praise be to PTSD, Lord. At last, we have reached the end. As fun as that was 36 pages of script. I need a cupcake and a coma.
Man, I feel like that's been my mental state for the last 2 years. Crap, make that 3.
Well, I can't shoot you out of the cannon until I reconstitute back at Fob Equestria.
And I have no clue how to end this.
Drive by Lancelot murder and then arrest?
Sure, why not?
Put him in the van. Get a blanket out of that one.